this time this is going to be a video response to Sir DTGtaihojutsu's stress video, where he discusses a lot of good points, and I mean totally, really excellent points about stress and how it can be used in self-defense, or if not, how can you overcome stress. First off, I'd like to say that people misunderstood stress a lot of times, and the normal notion, the accepted notion of stress that a lot of people understood was really being tense and really being negative in a situation, or being negative when they're in conflict with other people and all that stuff. Basically, they're not happy. So yeah, that's what a lot of people see as stress. What a lot of people, the majority of people don't know, the other side of stress is whenever you're high. So let's take, for example, when you ride a roller coaster ride for the first time. Yeah, I remember that time. And you're really stressful. It's negative stress where you feel anxious and you feel afraid because it's your first time, you don't know what's going to happen. And then by the time you get on the roller coaster and you rode that ride, and after that, by the time you step out of that, I call that the roller coaster train, I think, then you step out of the exit, you'd want to do it more. And you feel high, and you like it to the point where you would want to do it again and again and again. And that's stress also, on a positive side. So that's good to know. From those two, that's basically an imbalance of hormones, from what I've read. So stress is a type of imbalance in our body where a certain gland in our body stops producing a certain hormone, and another gland of our body produces more of the hormones in our body that we need. And in doing so, it creates a hormonal imbalance, and it really gets our body out of whack. And there are times when we feel high, and then there are times when we feel really low, and there are times when we feel really rigid and tense. So that's why we feel stress in both spectrums. Now, is stress a good thing or a bad thing, especially in a self-defense situation? That's a really risky area, because if you're stressful on a positive side, where you feel really high, you're going to tend to do, or even in the really low spectrum, where you really feel tense or sad or just down, it really breaks you down, because it's really pushing your body outside of your limits. Think about a sports car, for example. A sports car, especially if the engine was made for a race, is really fast. And whatever you do with it, if you're going to really maintain that kind of race car, it's going to run smoothly along the tracks, and it's going to maintain that high speed. However, take a movie like Fast and Furious, for example, where you're familiar with the boosts that they would press, I think sometimes located in the steering wheel, sometimes at the side where it's, I think, just below the stick. If you're driving a manual car, they're going to press that boost, and it's going to put the engine into overdrive for a certain amount of time. But if you're going to put the engine into overdrive all the time, so instead of it driving 200 miles per hour, it's going to go beyond 200 miles, so it's going to go, say, 300, or maybe 350, 360, past the speedometer. The tendency is that it's going to really ruin the engine fast. It's going to wear out the engine, it's going to wear out the chassis, and eventually the car will break down, and the car will go into a huge wreck in a very, very devastating way. And that's the closest analogy that I could think of when it comes to the body, the human body being in constant stress, whether it's low stress or the high stress, the positive or the negative stress. Now, if you're in a really self-defense situation, you can only be stressed at a certain amount of time. The reason being is, everything goes by so fast. Didn't you know that if you're in a stressful state, where you're really, really stressed, there are times where things around you would slow down, like in a matrix, for example? That happens a lot, especially to people who were in an accident. They would see a lot of things in slow motion because all of the certain hormones, I think it's called adrenaline, if I'm not mistaken, kicks in to the body and it triggers the fight or flight system of the body. And when that happens, all of the senses will go into overdrive, as I stated from the car example. And when it comes into overdrive, your senses become extremely sensitive that you're going to catch the very, very, or even the smallest detail that's really insignificant if you're just in a normal state, like what I'm doing right now, talking to you in this video. But if you're in an accident, for example, God forbid that you're not going to be, you'll be in a matrix state and everything's going to be in slow motion. That's the reason why if you're going to talk to an accident victim, you'll notice that they're going to explain even the smallest detail on what happened to the accident. Like there's a small debris flying, and they're even going to explain what kind of debris was flying, what the color was, what the shape was, etc., etc. But in a self-defense situation, that's really helpful, but only for a certain amount of time. Mainly because everything goes by so fast. Even though you see everything in slow motion, it doesn't mean that everything slowed down, literally. So you really have to act fast. And when you're in that stressful state, you really have to act quickly if you're going to fight or run away from that situation. And as a famous anime, or I think semi-famous anime that I watched, there's a really, really good line that a protagonist said to a master, and it's a martial arts anime. And the protagonist said, I can't do this certain technique because I'm so afraid, it's really dangerous, it's my first time, and all the excuses. And then he said that, finally, I don't know how to do this, and maybe I should just give up. Maybe there's no way for me to overcome fear. And the master really, really smartly said, the only way for you to overcome fear is to constantly train and to keep on training in martial arts. So, because this is a martial arts anime. To keep on training into martial arts until you overcome fear. And it's semi-true to self-defense, mainly because if you're going to train the right way, you're actually building up your body mechanics to react in a certain way so that you'll be able to save yourself from a very dangerous situation. Let's take, for example, judo rolls. If you don't know what a judo roll is, you just roll on the ground. Not like literally lie down and then roll. No. You're going to actually roll forward or backward. And if you practice that long enough, you'll see that whenever, say, you trip, you'll be able to see that if you rightfully train the judo rolls or the aikido rolls, you'll just be amazed that your body will just quickly roll out of harm's way, and you're going to be standing up and be surprised that you've got away from that situation that's scary. And that's what stress does when it comes to a self-defense situation. The bad thing about stress in a self-defense situation is that if you don't think fast enough, if you don't decide quickly enough, you'll be frozen. And that happened to me a lot of times. Not in a self-defense situation, but in a very, very stressful situation, which is similar. So, say for example, you saw a dog on the street, you're about to walk home, and then the dog, because it's very, very territorial, just growls at you. And what are you going to do? So the instant response that you're going to do is to freeze, right? And then whenever you feel that, okay, nothing's happening yet, then that's the time you're going to move slowly, try to calm the dog down, or you slowly move back away while searching for escape routes, very, very slowly, so that you're not going to be easily intimidating the dog even more. See, the first response that you're going to do is to freeze if you're not going to train properly in self-defense. And that's what stress does. That's a negative side of stress. So if you don't train properly in a martial arts aspect, and it covers all of the disciplines of martial arts, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to constantly practice for self-defense. It just means that you don't have, let me rephrase that. It just means that you should not overlook the self-defense aspect if you're not into self-defense, because it's part of martial arts. It's part of protecting yourself, and that's what martial arts is about in reality. There are competitions, there are reality-based, there are fitness, and there's for meditation for some, and some, they just make it a lifestyle because they love to do it. But in reality, if you're going to gather everything for martial arts, it's all for self-defense, it's all for self-preservation. And if you're not trained in the right way, then you'll not be able to react rightly in a very, very dangerous situation whenever you're stressed. So the key point, it's not to control the stress, it's your proper reaction to stress. And by proper reaction, what's the immediate right thing to do in that certain situation? Whenever you're in a very stressful situation or whenever you're stressed. And in this case, we're discussing about self-defense. So, yeah. If you're going to train for self-defense, make sure that you cover the aspect of stress. Make sure that you make it as realistic as possible, and say you time yourself for 3 seconds if you're going to take a weapon out, whether it's a firearm or a knife or any kind of blunt weapon. Time yourself for 3 seconds, for example, if you're given in that situation and in 3 seconds are going to fight, run away. If there are a lot of guys surrounding you, are going to fight, run away, in 3 seconds you should constantly look for escape routes. So those are the small things that you can do to train yourself in doing the right thing whenever you're in a very stressful situation. Yeah, I think that's about it. That's all the thoughts that I could gather about stress and self-defense. And I hope that this video has helped you even in the smallest way possible. Again, it's a video response to Sir DTGtaihojutsu. If you haven't checked his channel out, please do so. And if you like everything that he's recording and uploading in YouTube, especially for the martial arts community, please subscribe, because he's one of the best self-defense instructors that I've ever known in YouTube, and his instructionals are very excellent, both in speech and in action. So thank you so much. Hope this helped you even in the smallest way. God bless you all. Always train safe and take care.